In the Old Testament, God revealed His Son in many ways. Certainly we think of the law and how there are shadows and types in the law that reveal Christ, the sacrificial system. And maybe one that comes to the front of my mind more than anything is the Passover lamb. There at the Exodus, and they first began to celebrate God's redeeming them, delivering them from bondage, and transferring them slowly to the promised land. They took the Passover lamb, and it was slain, and the blood was placed upon the door. And there in that sacrifice and all the sacrificial system, Christ is portrayed in the priesthood, and through so many signs in the Old Testament, the Christ is there. In the New Testament, the New Testament writers, especially in the book of Hebrews, they show us that over and over again, how Jesus is portrayed and foreshadowed in the Old Testament, the law, how it points to Christ over and again. Think also beyond the shadows and types to the prophets that foretold His coming, that talked about both the first and the second coming of the Christ, that He would be the suffering servant in Isaiah. He would be the mighty God, the everlasting Father, the Prince of Peace, that He would be Immanuel, God with us, that the seed of the woman in Genesis 3 would come and would crush the head of the serpent, even though the serpent would bruise his heel. Over and again, the prophecies throughout the Old Testament foretold His coming, His ministry, His godhood, His death and resurrection. And certainly then Jesus Himself is there in the Old Testament, there at creation, the Word of God through which all things were created. Jesus is there, the captain of the Lord's army coming before Joshua. He's there on the mountain with Moses. He's there dining with Abraham. We see Jesus pre-incarnate, active, working, ministering, speaking, there foretold and foreshadowed, there prophesied about. Again, active in the will and the working of the Godhead.